make us feel like we're still living in a world I know is burning to the ground.
Call me to come home, come and see, this is where you should be. All these fields could be yours to own, come be free, this is where you should be. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, BCC. Why don't you stand and join us? There were walls between us. By the cross you came and broke them down. You broke them down. And there were chains around us. By your grace we are no longer bound. No longer bound. You call me out of the grave. You call me into the light. You call my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Oh, oh, feel the darkness shaking. All creation back to life. I'm back to life. Hear the song awaken. All creation singing we're alive. 'Cause you're alive. You call me out of the grave. You call me into the light. You call my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shout it out, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shout it out, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found. Death can't hold us down. We shout it out, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Oh, 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 your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Yeah. Nothing can tear us from the grip of His mighty love. We've only glimpsed His vast affection, heard whispers of His heart and passion. It's pouring out. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, it is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, and it's waking hearts to life. The Father loves and sends His Son. The Son lays down His life for all. Oh, love is wide and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, it is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. You're waking hearts to life. You're waking hearts to life with your love, with your love, your love. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, it is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. Help us out. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, it is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, it is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. Sing this one more time. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, it is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, and it's waking hearts to life. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. Oh, I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was alone, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt nowhere, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves at 99. Oh, I couldn't hurt it, and I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Sing that out. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Just go ahead and have a seat. That is so true, that Jesus, there's nothing that will keep us from his love. And that's what we're going to do right now, is to remember that incredible, reckless love he has for each and every one of us, that we are not beyond the reach of God. We've not gone too far. He's there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass some grape juice and some bread to represent his body and his blood that was shed for each one of us. And if this is your first time here and this feels a little awkward, or you're just really uncomfortable with this, or maybe you're just not even ready to do this, it's okay to go ahead and pass those things along. We're also you're gonna probably hear some cups cracking around you, and all that is to symbolize the finality of what Jesus did on the cross, that it was finished. So let's go ahead and pray, and we'll pass that. God, we did not deserve this. We did not deserve the forgiveness and the acceptance and the life that you offer each and every one of us. But you gave it to us anyway. And we want to just say, thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We don't do that enough. So God, as we take these elements, help us to remember, really to remember what you did, that it wasn't just some act 2,000 years ago. God, it's for us right now. In your name we pray. Amen.
Will you all stand with us? You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. And nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. And nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. And death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the voice of sin and grave. The heavens are rolling, the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no rival. You have no equal. Now and forever. for being all powerful, for coming for us, for rescuing us when we didn't deserve it, when it was lost, when we were lost. We thank you for seeing us as a worthy cause and not as just another broken vase. So Jesus, we give this time to you. We thank you for all that you're going to do through us. In your name, amen. Y'all can have a seat.
Morning. Good morning. How you doing? Good. All right, okay, here we go. Hey, anybody show up here last week? They're so sorry about that. Happy New Year. I mean, hey, good morning. Good to see you. Happy 2019 to you. So good to have you with us. You know, we feel privileged anytime that anyone wants to come and be a part of it, give some of their kind of precious weekend time to us. And so we're privileged that you're here. And that's always true, but it's especially true if you're brand new. If you're a brand new friend here for the very first time today, hey, welcome to you. We know it can be scary to walk into a new church for the first time. So thanks for having the courage to take a chance on us. And we really hope that you leave here today convinced. You're convinced that you were in a safe place where your story was safe regardless of how it reads, and it didn't matter what you did or didn't believe, that you were in a place with people who are exactly like you, that you were in a place that you want to return to, you want to come back and do this all over again with us real soon. We hope all of that's true of you, so special shout out and welcome to you if you're brand new, and of course to all of our online friends checking us out right now too. Good to have you with us today. You know, I don't know about you, I'm going to start with a question today. So is there anybody else here that's kind of glad that 2018 kind of came to an end? Yeah, I was like, yeah. So I just want to say me too to that. You know, I listen, I appreciate every day, every week, every year that God gives me. This is the day God's made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it. I get all that stuff, but I just want to say 2018 was one of the most challenging leadership years for me in my entire life. So heading into 2018, into last year, let's back up a little bit. I was talking with my friend Morgan, and he kind of confirmed to me what I was already feeling about 2018. He started talking about cottonwood trees and how cottonwood trees grow really, really fast. But the problem is they grow really, really fast, but they also crash violently. And that's because they're never pruned. And I was listening to him, and I'd already been thinking that 2018 needed to be a year of pruning for us as a church because we've been on this growth track for 8 straight years. It's like up and to the right, up and to the right, up and to the right. Here we go. And I felt like God was saying, hey, we need to pause. We need to call time out, and we need to shore some things up and build a foundation that God could build on for years and hopefully decades to come. And so I grabbed our staff heading into last year and I said, okay, here's the deal. This is going to be the year. 2018 is going to be the year of the no. We're going to say no to everything new. Now, so you may have been on the receiving end of that because you said to a staff person, we ought to do this, we ought to do that. And they said, no, okay? Here's what I want to say to you. Don't blame them, blame me. That came from me. So I told them, I said, we're going to say no to everything new, and we're going to make everything we're already doing stronger, and we're going to make it better. And I'm going to push people from stage like I never have before. I'm going to challenge people to go deeper. I'm going to challenge people to really chase after Jesus and to give and to serve and surrender and sacrifice, to take up their cross, to follow Jesus, to lay down their lives, to lose their own lives. I'm going to do that. And I said, listen, we could lose 500 people in 2018. So we just started doing that. And we did that all of last year. We get to the end of the year, and so it wasn't up and to the right. It was down and to the right. So we lost about 150 people per week last year in attendance, so we dropped a little bit. But the good news is our giving offering was up 15% plus, and the number of people or families that are on mission with us was up 37%, and our per-person giving is the highest that it's ever been in the history of this entire church. Hey, you can give it up for that. All that to say, thank you. Thank you, because you're the ones of you that are here, you're the ones that made that possible. And all that to say, I think we are as healthy as we've ever been as a church. I think we're as healthy as we've ever been as a staff. And I think that the best is yet to come, and this is going to be an epic year here at DCC. Now, that means a lot to you, and you like hearing that stuff if you're a part of this place. But if you're not, it's kind of like, so what? not so much. So let's keep going. So going into this year, last fall, I told our staff and our elders in 2 different meetings, 2 different sessions, I said, hey, here's the deal. I feel like the word God's given me for this next year is epic. 2019, the word is epic. And so as I was getting ready to walk in and talk to in an all-staff meeting and talk to our staff about that for the very first time, as I was walking down the hall, EPIC, epic, became every person is crucial. So if we want this to be an epic year as a church, I feel like we got to go, every person is crucial. So we have to, if we want to move this vision forward, if we want to continue to move it forward, this vision of changing what people think when they hear the word church and Christian in our city and beyond, then we have to continue to remind ourselves that every person is crucial. Every person is vital. Every person is essential. Every person is significant in this place. And we believe that, and we're trying our best to live that out in this place. But the question still remains, so what? Right? If this isn't your place, so what? What does that have to do with me individually? What does it have to do with you? I mean, we came out of Christmas weekend, the last time we were together, saying that we're going to pick up with this epic series. We're going to pick up right where we left off at Christmas. Where did we land the plane at Christmas? We landed the plane here. Jesus came to rescue me. So a lot of us here today, we want to hear more about that. So the question is, what does that mean? What does that look like? How can we experience more of that? What does that look like in our day-to-day lives and stories? That's what we really want to hear. That's what some of us even came back to hear. And the good news is we're going to answer all those questions in this series. We're going to go after all those questions in this series. Why are we going to do that? Here's why. Because not a single one of us that are here this morning want to be in the same place next year or sitting in the same date next year, looking back on a year and realizing that 2019 was just another year of more of the same. Not a one of us here today want that. So we're going to see if we can change that up. So as we dive into this epic thing today, as we start this journey, here's what I want us to think. Not every person is crucial. I want us to think every part is crucial. What am I talking about? Every part of this series is crucial, which means I'm asking you more than ever before to make a commitment to be here every week of this series through the month of January. You're just going to say, look, I'm going to do whatever I can to be there every weekend in January. And I think you ought to come back first weekend in February, too, because we got some cool stuff planned for Super Bowl Sunday. But that's a whole different topic. So, but just I'm going to be here every single week. Why? Because every part is crucial. Not one single part is more crucial than any other part. And the part that we're starting with today, that we're starting the journey with today, is not more crucial than any other part. But it is the part that we most tend to miss. So, let's jump into this. Let's start the journey. Let's start unpacking this, and let's see if we can begin to change that. We're going to John chapter 1 today. So if you brought a Bible, this is the time you can get it out. John chapter 1, there's Bibles on the back tables. Maybe weird to grab it now. Grab it on your way home. Hit our app, hit YouVersion, or just read with me on the screen. So we're going to start at the very beginning of the chapter. John chapter 1, beginning with verse 1. It says this, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. And in him was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. And that light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." All right, let's stop right there. So we mentioned this verse, that last verse on Christmas weekend. This is John's version of Jesus coming into the world. This is John's version of the Christmas story, the baby born in the manger. This word, and if it seems confusing to you, I get it. I really do. This word is a person. This word is Jesus. So Jesus is the word that was with God at creation. He's the light that shines into the darkness. The darkness has not overcome it. This is why we lit those candles at Christmas. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, so we talked a little bit about it at Christmas. I want us to dive even deeper into it today. So when you start to study this stuff, this particularly verse 5, the last verse there, the darkness has not overcome it. The Greek word, the original language, the Greek word for the word overcome here is katalombono. All right? That's Kentucky Greek, but you get it, right? So it means overcome, but here's the tricky part about this Greek word. It also means understood. In fact, you may be looking at a Bible on your phone right now or have your Bible out, and your Bible may say, "And the darkness has not understood it." See, I want to pay attention today to that. We talked about overcoming it. The darkness has not, will not, and cannot overcome it ever. We talked about that at Christmas. I want to talk about understood it. The darkness has not understood it. So when you think about this darkness thing, it seems to be something that exists, right, before we understand who Jesus really is. It's this thing in our lives that exists before we understand, come to know Jesus, come to trust Jesus, and start to follow Jesus in our lives. And so I was thinking about it this past week, and as I studied it, here's the question that came to mind. Here's the question for us. What if people who already love and follow Jesus, what if they can still remain in the dark in some ways in their lives too? See, I think they can. Not only that, I'm going to go one step further. I think this darkness thing, this remaining in darkness thing, is one of the things that causes you and me to have these years click off in our life, and we look back on the year, and we're faced with the reality that nothing in our lives has really changed. It's just another year of more of the same. I think that's so true. We want this year to be different. So if we want this year to be different, whether we're followers of Jesus or not, that's the coolest part of this. It works. Here's a non-negotiable question that we need to ask ourselves. Where am I still in the dark? Where am I still in the dark as I sit here today? Now, you can say you're in the dark because you don't understand Jesus, who Jesus is. Okay, that's one way. You can say you're in the dark because you're confused about that. You can say you're in the dark because you're continuing to do things in your life that you know God doesn't want you to do. That's another way. You can say you're in the dark because you don't understand all of God's word, the Bible, and it's kind of confusing to you. There's all kinds of ways that we could talk about being in darkness. I'm not talking about any of those. The way that I want us to think about this today is this. The context of all of our lives and stories is war. It's what you wake up to every single day. There is an enemy in your story who wants to keep you isolated, alone, and in the dark. And one of the primary ways that he does this is by luring us into reducing following Jesus to this. You need to believe this stuff, behave this way, and do these things. Believe this stuff, behave this way, and do these things. That's what following Jesus is all about. Listen, you think about us church people, us followers of Jesus. We understand the significance of Scripture. We understand the significance of the Bible. We understand the significance of sin. We understand the significance of serving, of giving back. And yet, if you look at the statistics, we blow our lives, our stories, our families, and our marriages up at the exact same rate that people who don't claim at all to know Jesus at the exact same rate that they do. We are not in the dark when it comes to the Bible. We know it and we quote it. We are not in the dark when it comes to our sin. We see it and we confess it. We are not in the dark when it comes to serving. We get really, 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 really busy for Jesus. Where we remain in the dark is right here. We don't fully understand the significance of this thing called story. And it's killing us. And that's why the first part of our mission statement in this church is discover your story. We exist to help people discover their stories. That's the first piece. Now, 14 years ago, I was in counseling, early on in counseling with a guy named Rob, a guy who would help me change my life forever. I'd blown my life up, and he was sitting with me. This is his first 2 weeks. He said, here's what I want you to do, Greg. Over the next week or two, I want you to construct a list. I want you to go back as far as you can in your life and your story, and I want you to write down every hurtful moment that you can remember. As early as you can remember, everything that hurt, felt off, you didn't like how it felt different, whatever it was, I want you, whether it seems like it should have or not, that doesn't matter. I just want you to write it down. And I remember leaving his office that day, and I was so mad. I was just like, really, dude, psycho, mumbo, jumbo, BS. I'm paying you to fix my marriage, not to psychoanalyze my childhood and all this stuff. And so I was so angry. I went home, I was like, I'm not going to do it. But you know what? I was so helpless and I was so hopeless. I had nowhere else to turn. I was at rock bottom in my life. I was so confused because I couldn't understand how a guy who loved his wife as much as I did, who loved his daughters and his kids as much as I did, who loved his church as much as I loved the church I was leading, who loved Jesus as much as I did, how can that guy do the things that I've done in my life? And I'm trying my best to hold my marriage and hold my family together. So I didn't want to do it, but I did it. For the next few weeks, I just started to make a list. So this past week, I was at home, and I went and I pulled my journal off the shelf. And I copied down a few of the things that I wrote about 14 years ago. I want to read a few of those things to you. So I was born with red hair and freckles. I grew up skinny, scrawny, and pale and sunburned. I constantly heard I'd rather be dead than red on the head. My teammates called me Opie Taylor. I got in a fight in a Little League game when a shortstop on the other team cracked on how I looked. I was late to the puberty party. I was told I was too scrawny. As a little boy, I was told I was too scrawny to ever make it as a Marine. I was told that girls would never be attracted to me, especially pretty girls. I had a humiliating moment in gym class in 7th grade when I was unable to do a pull-up. Now, those are just a few of the 30 or so things that I wrote down. And my guess is you're sitting here and you hear that and you're going, dude, so what? That all you got? Exactly. It's exactly what I was feeling as I was writing this stuff down. And I got to the bottom of this list after a week or two, and I'm reading, and every one of these things that I'm reading on this list just felt so freaking insignificant to me. I was like, this is just a big waste of time. And what I'm getting to is this. I did not understand the significance of any one of these moments until about 30 years after these moments actually happened in my life. For 30 years, they remained in the dark. Now, here's why I'm talking about this, and here's why this is so important. Bringing them into the light began to change everything in my life. And it will begin to change yours too. So, here's what I want us to do today. You know, we tend to sometimes in church, we talk in the clouds and in theory and all this. I want to dial this in, and I want to get really practical today. I want to put some stuff up here for you to, you can write this down if you want. The cool thing is, hey, this is helpful whether you're a believer in Jesus or not. So here you go. We'll post it sometime this week to make it easy for you if you can't keep up. I'm going to have it come up on the screen here behind me. So number one, I want to help you bring this stuff into the light in your own life and story. Number one, think about times and moments as far back in your life and stories you can remember that hurt and write them down. Now, you're going to start to struggle as you try to do this, so I want to get to 2 quickly. Number 2, don't minimize it or compare it. Just write it down because you're going to start to minimize it. That wasn't all that significant. Really, I'd rather be dead than red on the head? No. Don't minimize it. Don't compare it to somebody else's story. I'm telling you because you won't write it down. Just don't minimize or compare it. Write it down. Number 3, don't try to figure out why it hurt. Just admit that it did. You're alone. Nobody's there with you. You can admit to yourself it hurt, okay? So number 4, ask yourself what that moment said to you about you. Now, we need to pause here for a second because this is really, really important. A lot of the time, the pain of the moment is not near as significant as the pain that comes with what that moment is saying to you about you. This past week, last Sunday, a week ago, we jumped on a plane, flew to Cincinnati. We had a family wedding. Yay, family wedding. So we took all of our girls. It was the first time they'd been together in several months. It was really fun for them. And then we took my granddaughter. So all the Lindsay girls were there and me. I'm used to it. So we traveled to Cincinnati and we do the wedding. It was great. And then we drove down to Louisville. It's not 2 hours and a half away. And hung out with family there and stayed with a friend. And got to see my mom and my sister and my niece and my brother-in-law. And so every time that we're together with my sister, her name's Robin. I call her Bird. She doesn't like it. That's why I do it. So anyway, every time we're together, she decides it's a good opportunity for her to talk to my girls about my childhood. Has your dad told you blank, right? Yeah, I'm supposed to love her. I don't have to like her. So anyway, so she tells them, she said, did your dad tell you about all the stuff he stole when he was a kid? And does he tell you about how you like to set things on fire? And once set the garbage can on fire in the kitchen and had to call the fire department and then he'd like to blow things up. And yeah, and he'd turn over. Has your dad told you how he flipped the whole card table over whenever he was losing a board game? And all that's true. And I'm sitting there, and it wasn't, here's the thing that I realized for the first time this past Wednesday. I did that. I'd flipped the whole freaking card table over. Pieces go everywhere. It's just like, I see there's no way out. I'm going to lose. It's like, oh, no, I'm not. Boom. I flipped that sucker over. Monopoly, boom, it's flying everywhere. Scrabble, whatever we were playing at the time. I'm not going to lose. And what I realized for the first time this Wednesday was this. It wasn't about losing at Monopoly. It was the fact that I already saw myself as a loser because of how I looked. You're always going to be skinny and scrawny, and you'll always be and you'll never be, and no girl with. And I just couldn't stand the thought at losing at something else. See, it wasn't the pain of losing a stupid board game. It was the pain of what that moment was saying to me about me. When you look at these moments and you start to construct this list, what does that moment say to you about you? It's a very, very important question. Number 5, as you look at these moments, did other moments say or suggest something similar to you? This is huge. So we start to connect the dots. We start to look for patterns. We start to look for themes. See, sometimes a moment doesn't suggest something new to you. Sometimes it just reinforces something that you already believe to be true about you that you don't want to be true about you. And I'm telling you something. These are the most dangerous and destructive moments. when these things start to connect. So you start to look for patterns. You start to look for themes. We call them messages. And then number 6, never stop digging. Number 6 could be repeat step 1. That it's never over. It's not once and done. These 30 things or so that I wrote down 14 years ago, now it's a list of over 60 in my life and story. If you really want your life to change this year, right, you got to discover your story. But not only that, you have to learn to stay in it. You have to stay in it. Now, this is a big challenge for us. I think this is where, especially in church world, we get jacked, we get confused, and we tend to treat this stuff, this story stuff, like we do any other church study or class that we take, right? I got my certificate, I'm good. We put the book on the shelf, and we're good to go. No, you're not. I thought that. I read Wild at Heart for the first time, put it on the shelf, thought, good book. I was so wrong about that. There is always more to discover, always. There's always more with Jesus, and there's always more to discover in our stories, and that's why we point to the things that we point you to here at DCC. This is why we say to you, you need to read Wild at Heart. You need to read Captivating. Guess what? You need to do a group. You need to join a group. Guess what? Do it again. Co-lead. Lead a group. You need to go to boot camp. Go to boot camp again. Go to Morgan. Go to the intensive. Go to advanced camp. You need to do that. You need to go to a Captivating retreat. You need to go to Beauty Revealed or Women Revealed or Soul Beauty. You need to go to Crucible. You need to staff a Crucible. Why? Because every one of these things that I'm talking about, it's all about your story, your story, your story, your story. I've done every single one of those things. Well, except for Soul Beauty and Women Revealed and Captivated. That'd be kind of creepy if you think about it. But all the guy stuff, I've done it over and over and over again. And every single time, you know what I found? I've found more stuff. I've discovered more of my story. This past year, I got invited, Stacy and I got invited over to Ransom's Heart to do this 2-day prayer and teaching thing, small group thing. And I'm in this listening prayer session and doing some listening prayer. And you know what I discovered? I found something that had been in the shadows, in the dark, for the last 10 years of my life. It was a deep-seated agreement that I'd made. It went like this. I'm not worthy of being a pastor. For the last 10 years of my life, I've been living under this agreement. I'm not worthy of being a pastor. You know what you do when you've agreed that you're not worthy to be a pastor? You do a whole lot of things in your life to prove that you are worthy to be a pastor and that that's not true. I'm going to tell you something. That is such an unhealthy space to live in. It's the significance of our stories. There is always more there. There's always more story to discover. There's always more messages to be erased. There's always more of these agreements that we've made about ourselves that need to be broken. This question that we started with today is such an important question. If we want this year to be different, this is a huge question for us to ask, not once, not twice, but to continue to ask ourselves, where am I still in the dark? Well, let's keep going in the story. Verse 6. There was a man sent from God whose name was John, and he came as a witness to testify concerning that light that came to shine into the darkness, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. Okay, now I want to unpack the first part of that a little bit because it can be a little bit confusing. So he's talking about two different Johns here. There's John that's writing the book, and he's talking about this other guy named John that comes into the world, John the Baptist, the cousin of Jesus, and he's just wanting to make it clear, he's not the light. A lot of people thought that he was. But he's not the light. He came to point to the light. And so if you keep reading in John chapter 1, we're reading today, like verse 35, there's this moment where John the Baptist is baptizing people in the River Jordan, and he points because Jesus is up on the bank, and he says, there he is. There's the light. There's the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. So John points to Jesus. And yet what? Darkness doesn't understand the light. His own people, Israel, they don't recognize it. They reject him. But then he goes on to say this, but those who did believe, to them, he gives the right to become children of God. So, Jesus, when we say Jesus came to rescue me, what are we talking about? Jesus came to change what a relationship with God could actually be for you and me. And so my question for you as you sit here today, as we enter this new year, is this. Have you really experienced that in your life? So here we are. We're starting this new year. We're in pursuit of something better, something different, something more than just more of the same. If we really want that, I really want to push you to consider this. We must choose close over connected. You have people in your life that you're close to. You have people in your life that you're connected to. You have people in your life you're really close to, and then people you're just connected to. And you know there's a big difference. And see, I don't know about you, but I spent most of my life connected to God, but not really all that close to God. And see, I didn't really understand, even though I grew up in church, I didn't understand what a relationship with God could actually be. I didn't understand that God wanted a close, personal, daily, conversational, very intimate relationship with me, and that Jesus came to rescue me. Jesus came to make that possible for me. For so many years in my life, I missed that. I didn't understand that this close thing was really a possibility at all for me. Now here's why this is so important. See this awareness thing that we're talking about? Awareness of story, awareness alone is not enough. I've got to have something to do with that stuff. I got to have somewhere to take that stuff. I got to have someone to help me break down the lies and see the lies. I got to have someone to help me erase the messages, to break those agreements, to help me to break down the conclusions that I've come to myself as a result of the things I've done in my life and all the things that life has thrown at me. I need some help with that. My counselor, Rob, was great at helping me identify painful moments in my story. He was great in helping me understand that there's a larger story here, that there's a narrative that's being constructed here about you as a result of that, and giving me some tips and techniques to help with that, and that was good. But my friend Michael, the guy who took me back to Wild at Heart, at the lowest point in my life, you know what he did? He introduced me to a Father that I had never known before, a God that I could take this mess that was my life and story, that I could take that stuff too. Everything in my life began to change. See, I needed a God, not just a God that I could be connected to. I needed a loving Father that I could be close to. And the problem was, I had really struggled for most of my life to believe God could really be that for me. Have you ever struggled with that? See, it makes sense if you think about it. God sometimes he just doesn't seem like that. And I think that's why John makes it a point as he writes this to say to us, look, you got to understand this light coming into the darkness. He came to change what a relationship with God as the Father, what that could be. Think about the people he's writing to. He's writing to people who all they have is the Old Testament. All they have is Old Testament God. And think about it. If that's all we have and that's all we can experience, look out. Let's just be honest, look out. Because unless you dig really deep in the Old Testament, on the surface, God seems a bit scary and kind of constantly pissed off. Doesn't he? And you can just kind of like, you learn to what? You learn to walk on eggshells. And you learn to walk carefully, and you better do what he wants you to do, and you better do what he tells you to do, or else. What does he seem like? He seems a lot like a lot of our earthly fathers. See, I don't think we realize how much we project our experience with our earthly fathers onto God. And so, that's someone I can get close to? Yeah, just get close to God. That wasn't an option. I mean, in the Old Testament, you had to have a go-between. You had to have an intermediary, right? I mean, you had to have somebody go to God on your behalf. God lived behind a curtain in the tabernacle, and there was only one person, a priest, who could go in there for a specific purpose at a specific time. So you can't just say, you know what, I need to talk to God. I'm going in. Boom, you're dead. And Jesus, he came to change all of that. That's why when he's on the cross, that's the significance of, and this thick curtain in the temple is torn in two, top to bottom. Jesus came to change that. And here's the problem. We read it, we study it, we understand it, and yet most of us haven't really experienced it. That's been my experience. I grew up a church kid. I grew up a church kid who was scared to death of God. That I had better watch myself, and I had better be sure that I do exactly what he tells me to do, or else. He was a God I should be scared of, not a God I could really get close to. See, I don't think it's all that uncommon. And here's what happens when we do that. Right? Here's what's happens to us. When God becomes, when his main concern is my behavior, then is he really all concerned about my hurt and my pain? Not just the things I've done, but what about the things that have been done to me? How much concern does God really have about my divorce? How much concern does God really have about what I find myself going through in this particular moment? How much concern does God have about my cancer, what my child is going through? See, it's a problem for us. It's a problem for us when God is this God that all he cares about is our behavior. If we see God like this, then here's my question. What happens when our behavior falls short? Uh-oh. When I was digging in my story last year and I came across this agreement, I'm not worthy of being a pastor, and I realized I've been trying to prove that I am, and so I had to really work through this thing with God and come to this space, and it's really freeing that I don't have anything to prove anymore. I don't have anything to prove, but as I was digging, you know what else I found? I was like, oops, look, there's another agreement. You know what it was? God is really disappointed in me. He's disappointed in me. He's disappointed in me because of what I did 14 years ago as a pastor and how I hurt his church. He's disappointed in how I hurt my wife and my kids, people in my church. He's disappointed in the way I responded to, when I got to Colorado Springs, I didn't have the greatest of initial contact with a lot of pastors in town, the way I kind of flipped them off and stiff-armed them, and he's disappointed in that. He's disappointed in the envy and jealousy that I've felt in the last 10 years towards other pastors whose ministries seem to be more successful than mine. He's disappointed in the way I think sometimes. He's disappointed that I rely on myself more than I rely on him. He's disappointed in a lot of the thoughts and the mistakes I've made as a leader in the last 10 years of this place. God's just disappointed in me. You ever feel like that? That's so hopeless. See, when we feel like God's disappointed in us, can I just tell you something about that? First of all, nothing could be further from the truth, but what it does is it pushes God out here. We're not going to move towards a God that we feel like that we're a constant disappointment to, and we miss out on the healing, redemption, and restoration in our stories that our hearts desperately need. And so when God is not the answer, when God is not somebody I can get close to and draw near to, when he remains Old Testament God to me, when that is true, what do? We turn to something or someone else to medicate the pain, turn down the noise, and at least temporarily prove to us that the conclusions that we've reached about ourselves are not true. You know how I know that? Because it's my story. It is a formula for disaster in all of our lives and stories, and an absolute path to more of the same this year for all of us. So what do you say? How about we change that? Awareness alone is not the answer. We need to become aware of our stories, and then we need to take the mess that is our life and story to God and ask him to dive into that with us. Now, we're going to talk a lot more about that next week in detail. What does that really mean? What does that look like? That's next week. For today, there's no way that this year is going to be different for any of us unless we're willing to begin to live differently. And so here's what I want to suggest. How about this year? This year, I'm going to begin to lean into what a real relationship with God as a loving Father can be for me. What if we just start there? Well, let's finish this thing up. Verse 14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And we've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and full of truth. Okay, so we've talked about this verse many, many times here at DCC in the context of what the church should be. What should we be church? So in John chapter 1, we're told if we claim to follow Jesus, if we really love Jesus, then we should walk in life as he walked in his life. How did Jesus walk? Well, he walked full on grace, full on truth all the time. Not 60-40, not 50-50, not 70-30, 80-20, not some weird split. Full on grace, full on truth all the time. And so we've said that as a church, we should be a place of unlimited grace. There is no limit to our grace, and uncompromising truth. We will never compromise truth, which is great, but today's not about the church. Today's about you and me. So let's land the plane with this. Grace and truth starts with me. Grace and truth starts with me. Now, I'm not talking about the grace that you extend to people around you, right? Even though that's really, really important. I'm talking about the grace that you extend to yourself. Because my experience has been with people, especially church people, we kind of suck at this. We don't do a good job of extending ourselves grace. We're not very loving when it comes to ourselves and our own stories. We're not very kind to our own hearts. You see, when you read the Old Testament, see, law was truth. And even though God did extend grace to people, it wasn't really called that in the Old Testament, so we get a little bit confused. So you can read through the Old Testament, and you can think, it's all about truth, and our commitment to live out God's truth. But here's what I want you to understand. Jesus came to change that. Jesus came to rescue me. Jesus came to change that. And you're like, what do you mean? Listen, Jesus didn't come to do away with the truth. He's 100% about the truth. But a big part of Jesus rescuing you and me. Well, Jesus came to rescue me. What's that mean? A big part of that means this. Jesus came to introduce this thing called grace into the equation too. And we can't lose that. We have to understand. Here's the key to understanding this grace thing. Grace should never be used in contemplation of what we're getting ready to do. Don't do that. You know, I'm getting ready to do this thing. I know God doesn't want me to. But there's grace. That's not it. None of us should ever use our stories, what we've done in the past, what we're currently doing, or what we are going to do in the future, we're considering doing, to justify anything we're doing, anything that we're doing, that we've done in the past, we're currently doing, we're going to do, that is contrary to God's truth. We can't do that. It doesn't matter how bad your story is or how brutal the circumstances of your story may be. Story is never intended to justify anything that we do. It's never intended to justify, but it is there to provide a framework that hopefully will help you and me begin to understand a lot of the why behind why we do the things that we do. Here's the grace and truth, full on grace, full on truth. Here's what the enemy in your story wants you to do. He wants you to look at your life. He wants you to look at your story through one lens, through the sole lens of truth, God's truth. He wants you to look at your life and story through the lens of condemnation, judgment, accusation, blame, guilt, and shame. But Jesus came to rescue us. Jesus came to help us interpret our stories differently. All love, all grace, all truth, all the time. A few years ago, someone gave me a framed print. It's a quote from Brene Brown. If you haven't read any of her stuff, you really should. But it goes like this. I have it sitting upstairs on my chair in the mornings, and I can see it every single day. It's right there in front of me. Owning our story and loving ourself through the process is the bravest thing we ever do. Owning our own story, all of it, and then loving ourselves through the process is the bravest thing that any of us will ever do. So as we dig, as we excavate, as we shine light into dark places, as we discover our stories, we must also be sure that we are loving ourselves through the process too. You need to understand, as jacked up as your story may be as you sit here today, as brutal as the facts and circumstances may be, what you've done, what's been done to you, said about you, all that stuff, whatever you do, Jesus always, when he looks at you through a lens, through eyes of love, grace, truth. So, as you walk into this story stuff, you got to make sure when you look in that mirror, you're seeing yourself through those exact same eyes too. We all have plans for this year. 2019. Things we're going to do. All the stuff we've got planned so that this year will be different. You've got yours, I've got mine too. Can I tell you something? You need to realize this. If this story stuff that we're talking about today stays in the dark, all of it will eventually come up empty. It's only a matter of time. You'll be looking back at another year of more of the same. If we want to find our place in this epic story that God's telling around us, we must stop today. Stop overlooking and ignoring the significance of our own stories. That's part one. So we dig and we excavate and we discover and we shine light. And boom, there it is. It's on the table. It's right in front of us. Now what? That's part two. And unfortunately, that's next week. So thanks so much for starting the year with us and being here today. Really do hope you come back for part two next week. Let me pray us out. Jesus, we love you. And here's something that I know to be true of every one of our hearts, regardless of how our story reads. There's more available for all of us. We want it. We don't want to sell ourselves short on anything that you came to do for us. Anything that you came to do in us, anything that you came to do through us, Jesus, we want it all. And so would you help us to start? As scary as it might be, there are hurtful, painful things there. As we dig them up, it's excruciating. And so it seems like the cost outweighs the benefit. Would you help us just to trust you? Would you shine light into the darkness that exists in all of our lives and stories? Would you bring it to the surface? And then would you help us as we walk into that mess with you so that you can lead us through it, so that you can do what only you can do with that, that you can lead us to this life that we're all desperate for, that we all came in here looking for, that only you can bring us. We want every bit of the life to the fullest you came to bring us, Jesus. Would you guide us on that path? Help us to take the journey so this year won't just be another year of more of the same in any of our stories. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Hey, DCC. Whoa, that was hot. No, I'm not hot. How's your Epic Sunday going? All right? Well, as a church, DCC, we always try to offer hope. And so I've been spending all weekend trying to rack my brain on how to give Broncos fans any hope. So I came up with a couple things. One, I think you could join me in rooting for the Bears. Or you could also join me and spend every morning and every evening, although it didn't work for last night, but to constantly be dedicated to prayer that the Patriots and the Cowboys never make it to the Super Bowl. All right, I've got a few more important announcements to make. One of the things I always want to do in January to kick off as we are in this Epic series and everything is just to remind everybody, one of the biggest challenges that a church faces sometimes throughout the year is that we get these snow days, we get summers where people are on vacation and everything like that. And so when this whole weekend shuts down or we have to cancel or attendance is way low and you save, you have your giving and your stuff and you're not here, then that doesn't happen. And that puts us in this big, huge thing. So one of the things I always want to remind you is something that has really worked well for me is just to be able to go online and set an amount up and it constantly comes out and you can set it to when you want it to come out and everything. But I really want to encourage you to set it and forget it. It also takes away the challenge, right? The enemy is always going to come at us with a lot of bills and all kinds of stuff and hey, I want that and I want to go to Duluth Trading Company and find, some really cool flannel or something like that. And so just set it, forget it, don't give the enemy that space. But January, we always just want to remind you, start the year off. That would really help us stay in mission. We don't beat you up at all about that. There are boxes at the back if you want to give here. If you need help setting that up, you can go to the information booth, you can go to the garage, and we can help you set up. The other thing about January is because while the weekend service is important to us, one of the biggest things that we want you to get out of here is that we need you to get into community. The enemy wants to push you aside, make you feel alone, and let you battle him by yourself. And so the biggest way to combat that, as men, as women, as couples, as families, is to get yourself into small groups. And in January, we've got a ton of small groups that are launching. And I can't even list them all, or we'd be here all day. So go to the garage if you want to learn more about all the small groups that are launching in January. But please go out to the garage and sign up and get into community. If you're suffering, we've got groups for that. If you want to do Bible study, we've got groups for that. If Wild at Heart, Captivating, there's all kinds of things starting this month. And they're open, so you've got time. So please make that a very important part of there. I also want to get that graphic up for the men's. January 18th from 6 to 10 p.m. You see that's the Uhtred, son of Uhtred, that's behind me there. He is from Last Kingdom on Netflix. We're going to do the first 2 episodes. And the reason why we're doing that instead of a full-on movie is because there's some significant things that happen in those first 2 episodes where Uhtred here faces some things in his storyline. He faces some woundings that are going to continue to you're going to see them play out throughout his life. And so Andrew Perquette and I are going to kind of draw those out as we go through and watch those. So please, men, show up. We're going to have all kinds of food. We're going to have all kinds of, good time and shoot the bull and everything like that. But we'll watch this, and then we'll draw out some spiritual connections to that, all right? So I think I am going to remember. Prayer screens to my right and to my left. If you need prayer, we have people here that are going to sit with you and they're going to pray with you. And then they also communicate that to our staff, and we pray for you every week. We love you. Have a good Sunday. Go Bears.